Well, good morning to everyone. My name is Tim Sweeney. I'm a senior fellow at the Midwest Center for Nonprofit Leadership at UMKC, and we're delighted to have you here today. If some of you may know this, but today is part of a series that we constructed through the navigation series around fundraising. And really at the beginning of the pandemic, the Midwest Center decided we needed a forum as nonprofit professionals where we could gather consistently, exchange ideas, share new research and insights into our sector. And that's how the navigation series was launched. About 2 or 3 months into that, we realized we really needed a series specifically dedicated to fundraising. So this is a subset of the navigation series. Today we have Jennifer Wampler and Cindy Laufer presenting on the role of flexibility, agility, and the ability to pivot, which is really apropos right now, given the circumstances of life in 2020. Next week, they're going to be talking about events and donor relationships in 2021. So the two sessions, just today and next week, are paired together. So if you're going to be around next week, we'd love to have you. Couple housekeeping things. One is keep your microphones muted, of course. If you have questions, Cindy and Jennifer say absolutely raise your voice throughout the session. They're happy to hear them. If you prefer, you can post them on chat, and UMKC staff, the Midwest Center staff, will be keeping an eye on that chat and will voice the questions for you if you prefer to post in the chat stream. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Cindy and Jennifer to take over for the session. We'll conclude with a few brief remarks on upcoming sessions, opportunities to do some evaluation. But we, again, are delighted you're here and delighted that our sector is so strong that we have 100 plus today on the call, and are looking forward to what Cindy and Jennifer have to share. So I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Okay. Jennifer, go ahead and load the PowerPoint, I guess, just while I'm introducing and starting to talk about this. So good morning, everybody. We're really happy you're here. We started to design this program about how do we even start to look at next year and that post-COVID. How do you guys start to plan for 2021 when we're not sure what post-COVID will look like? I'm getting really tired of saying post-COVID too, but I don't like new normally. They're gonna have to come up with something. But we don't know what it will look like, what our clients will look like, what they will need from us. We also don't even know when it's going to arrive. We don't know if this is going to happen in March, if it's going to be around in July, if we'll still be working towards it in October. So how do you prepare for an undefined year? We think that some of these things can be really helpful. So flexibility, agility, and pivoting will lead you to be to be more resilient. And we're going to share some practical tips in a little bit for you to kind of how you can actually put these into action as you go planning. But first, I want to share with you 3 different sort of little case studies, little stories about some nonprofits that I feel that have survived to date, and I feel are thriving. That's I'll say that. And I think they're doing these behaviors, and I kind of want to point these behaviors out to you. Well, I've chosen 3 organizations. I really feel like I could have talked to probably anybody on this call. And I just got a message. I don't know if Edie sent it to everybody, but Edie just sent me a note, or sent a note out on the chat that pivot is her new normal. I think everybody's been going through these behaviors. Maybe you recognize them, maybe not. I think maybe you'll recognize some things in the stories I tell, and like, oh yeah, that's what we've had to do too. I think everybody has pieces of this. And because of that, that's kind of how we've structured today. We really think that there's a lot of value in all of our voices and everybody sharing what we're doing, because there hasn't been a nonprofit that I think Jennifer or I have gone to in the last few months that hasn't had some interesting idea that they were doing. So we're going to share a little bit of information first, but we do have and hopefully you have the PowerPoint in front of you. We do have some questions that we'll use to prompt kind of a discussion at the end, but we really want to get you guys to share and to tell us what you're doing, tell us what you did that didn't work. And so we'll kind of get into that at the end, but that's sort of why we've structured it the way we have today. So with that, Yes, as Tim said, please feel free to, ask us questions. You can throw your hand up. I do have some people looking at the chat right now. So as we're going through, if we miss something, we'll catch it. So please feel free to do that. Also, let's see the other, I want to just, Jennifer's going to quickly, just so we are on the same page, she's going to sort of define these terms for us, just so that we kind of make sure that we are starting at the same place. So.
Thanks, Cindy. Yeah, my name's Jennifer Wampler, and I'm probably the fourth case study because I work for Kansas City Ballet. I'm Chief Development Officer there, and yeah, the arts have been through a lot in the last 9 months, so we've had to pivot quite a bit. So I'm glad to be on this with Cindy. So mental agility and flexibility really are at the heart of effective problem solving, which as we're going through this today, we're kind of calling pivoting because we're having to do a lot of quick problem solving. And that agility and flexibility is really necessary in times like this of catastrophic change, but also in normal times when we're having to deal with internal and external forces that change our status quo. So flexibility really is the ability to react to new environments or changing requirements. First and foremost, flexibility does not require speed. Agility implicitly requires quick reactions, but flexibility can take time to adapt to things. And adapt is the key word. Agility is the ability.
Jennifer, just a second. Are you switching to PowerPoint? Okay. I'm usually in charge, so Jennifer's been given more.
Sorry, there we go. There's flexibility. Thank you, Cindy, because I was busy with my notes. Okay, agility is the ability to move quickly and easily, and it's a quality displayed by athletes and dancers the world over. It's a combination of reflexes and skills, and agility gives you the ability to react quickly. And pivot is the ability to change to your strategy, maybe to even reinvent your entire business in order to survive and thrive in fast changing markets. All right, back to Cindy.
Okay, so I wanted to just put this up here quickly because I think most people will be familiar with this, and I think this is somewhat what our world looks like now. Forming, storming, norming, and performing is something that many teams go through, and if you've ever studied about teams, it's kind of something we talk about. Forming is just coming together. You see kind of the two teams there coming together, the pink and the blue. So two different groups or fractions or thoughts or something. And they start to kind of come together, and in the middle there, you're seeing a slightly different color that they're creating something new. Oftentimes when you bring two or more together, they all come together and everything's great and they create this beautiful new color, and then things don't go so well. They come from different places, and there's often a storming part, whether it's just trying to figure out, no, we do it like this. You bring in a really hierarchical organization and a flat organization, and they don't know how to work together. Who's going to make decisions? How do we go up? We're not going up, we're going across. So trying to, they figure out this isn't business as usual, so to speak. They finally come into a norming phase where they start to create practices, procedures, protocols, roles and responsibilities for their group. And they all start working together. And then finally performing is the excelling, the thriving. It's where you're all in the boat and you're all rowing together and you're all going and you're coming out better for being together. So I just wanted to kind of remind people of that. Many people have gone through this. They're familiar with this model when you start to put something together. And I think it's pretty similar to what some of the things that we're looking at today that's happening. Go ahead, Jennifer. So this is a model that we've seen lately that's people are going through. And I don't know if you feel like you've gone through this or you're in one of these phases or something. There's the bump, the slump, the surge, and the new normal. And we're gonna have to change that new normal. But the bump is the crisis. It's the obstacle, it's the situation. I think for many of us, the bump in Kansas City, I'll just talk about it, probably other parts of the country, it was a similar type bump. But one of the biggest bumps in Kansas City was the stay-at-home orders. When we kind of had the lockdown and we shut down, and in mid-March, gatherings were really restricted. A lot of that stuff went into place, and that really impacted a lot of the nonprofits, many of the ones I'm going to talk about today. So the bump is a crisis. It's a thing that happens. Then there's the slump, and that's like what your world looks like. Is that like, oh, this is what things look like because of the bump. So all these different things that are happening now in this new situation, maybe lack of things happening, that you're not able to do things. But so that's sort of the slump, and that's where you're like, some places, not too many that I've talked to though, have stayed in the slump. Many move into the surge, and the surge is what you do about it. It's your answer to either the new crisis or the new situation because of the crisis. It's how you address people. It's getting data on what really the situation is now and coming up with new plans. The last thing is the after, the new normal, and this is what you will look like after the crisis, so to speak. What will your world look like when we're done with that? Organizations that kind of go through these 4 phases that are going to be, I think, more successful in the end, are going to come out of this more successful. They're learning lessons along the way, and I think probably many of you have learned these lessons, and that's what we're excited to hear about today too. Some of the things that are going to we'll talk about is a lot of people have relationships are seeming really important. Old relationships, new relationships, different ways of looking at things, different ways of gathering partnerships together. There's a lot of that going on. So they told their stories about, and also communicating, I wanted to say quickly, with people, letting everybody kind of know what's going on. So we share what really the situation looks like, because people knew who we were, but now they don't know. So making sure that people understand our new normal and what our day-to-day looks like, and keeping that in communication. Okay, Jennifer, next slide. These are the 3 pivoters, I'll call them, that I've spoken to the last few weeks. Hope Faith Ministries and Canbies Markets and Emmanuel Family and Child Development Center. And I'll go into each more a little bit so that you can learn who they are if you don't know them already. Go ahead, Jennifer. So Hope Faith is at 6th Street in Virginia, kind of just east of downtown. They work to alleviate homelessness and poverty in Kansas City. This is their mission. They provide basic needs as well as critical services. They have medical, dental on site, weekly visits from those types of people. They have a bike shop where people are learning skills and learn to, they also sell bikes. They are, let's see, they have showers. They're a day center, which is one of the biggest things that they're providing in Kansas City. They're the only day center in Kansas City where people can come during the day. You know, many of the shelters are serving people in the evening, but you can come during the day and get services. They feed people, they have laundry services, case management, all that kind of stuff. So go to the next slide. This is what they look like not too long ago, about a year ago. This is what they look like. Obviously, in March, this had to stop. There's a lot of people around here. They're too close together. They're not wearing masks, obviously. And so this sort of behavior couldn't happen anymore. This was a big problem. These people are used to coming here. I don't want to put out, I think I put out numbers of how many people would come through here every day, but I think it's at least 100 or more. And now they had no place to go. Very quickly, once these guys hit their slump and were told no more gatherings, no more things like this, and this was in March, so it was still a little cold, they made a decision very quickly that they would not shut down. That was not an option. And once that decision kind of became made, they were able to start to figure out what to go from there. They quickly put a couple partnerships in place. And if you want to go to the next slide, Jennifer. So they put a couple partnerships in place really quick. Heart to Heart International came and partnered with them. They do medical assistance, and also the city of Kansas City partnered with them. And so in March, they kind of got the partnerships going. They had to move outside, obviously. April came along really quick and they moved outside. They set up tents outside where people could gather and be distanced. They were serving 700 meals a day. They quickly learned, you can see some, this is some of the pictures from that time, the hand washing stations that were set up, the medical support they were being given. Bathrooms were something because everything closed up. So there was no place to go to the bathroom just in the urban core. And so porta potties were brought in. This pretty much went on through the summer. So they also added partnerships with like probation and parole, Rediscover, some more partnerships came in. They had a case management tent added on through the summer. Come August or come September, they started to kind of realize that this was, this was not going away as maybe they had thought in such a quick time, and they were going to have to go inside. So they've got a warehouse that had changed the ventilation in it, updated that. It's going to be a warming center for them at that time. They will also have some tents in place to also give it more space for people to spread out and things like that. Hope Faith wanted to recognize a couple things. One thing they said was that homeless people were some of the first adopters of masks, and they were very proud of that fact. And they also wanted me to know that homeless are resilient. So working with their clients was in a way from, and I wanted to say, I'm sorry, a shout out to Alfredo Palacal, who's the one who I interviewed. He's the Director of Human Services for this organization. He never talked really about the challenges with the homeless people. It was more about the challenges they had serving the homeless people. Alfredo kept also mentioning bright spots. He kept saying we had to look for the bright spots, and his term of bright spot was an opportunity, is what he was talking about. But that was something that they always kept going and looking for throughout, and just being open to bright spots coming. They had a lot of new relationships, and then some older relationships. They got stronger, got deeper. They feel like their work in the spring was about acute care. It was continuing to do what they do, providing that acute service, that immediate response. Since working through this, they, and some of these partners that I've mentioned that they've been working with, they're looking at this now, and their intention for their work going forward is going to be on a more systemic, a big system approach. They've started partnering with so many people that was where they're going to be going in the future. So that was a pretty big turn for them. Also, this is something that they look back on the crisis of 2008, and they realize that a lot of the times, though, in 2008, a lot of the problems actually came in 2009 and 10, and especially for their population. So this is just beginning for them, is the way they're looking at it. They credit some of their success on the organization morale. They're very happy that they've never had they've had one COVID case in their staff. Social service is inherent in their culture. So this was, again, shutting down, that's not an option. They've been very safe. They've been taking care of their staff, and they credit that as being one of the big successes of this. Okay, next. Canbies Markets. Canbies Markets is kind of a simple little thing. This is a market. Max Kaniger, who I interviewed, Max is the CEO and the founder of Canbies Markets. He brought these little markets into corner stores, into corner groceries, not even corner groceries, just corner stores in the urban core as an answer to food deserts. He, in January, had 12 markets, or he was in 12 corner markets. He had a bigger plan. So the one thing that did happen to Max through this period was his expansion slowed. Max had hoped to be, I think, around 50 at the end of the summer. Max is currently at 39 stores. And by the end of the year, he does hope to be in the 50 that he had scheduled. A couple of the reasons, though, that Max, what Max does is he provides these produce in these stores. He gets donated produce and produce purchased at a reasonable amount, and brings produce to areas that don't have access to it. Go to the next slide. So one of the things that slowed Max's expansion was that he had been working on doing some meal preparation, some prepared meals delivered to people, sort of the Meals on Wheels vein. And he had been working with the Mid-America Regional Council on this. This really accelerated things. And so they started to try this out, I think in March, maybe it was April, with 100 meals a week. And very quickly, it became 7,500 meals a week. And so that's where they are now. And they hope to be at 15,000 before too long. So this is something that was in the works, but not quite so fast that they just kind of had to, because of the need, really jump on. Go to the next one, please. The other thing that Max that slowed his normal progress, his expansion progress down, was restaurants closed. And there was a lot of supplies for restaurants that were around that needed to be taken care of. And the USDA worked with the local produce vendors to repackage this, the produce that was there waiting for restaurants to use that they were now not going to need. to then be donated. So Max and his team, who are just really great at boxing things, and this is one of their, and they have a wonderful warehouse, became involved in helping them to package that stuff up and then move it on to people that could use it. And I think they served about 55 to 60 organizations in the donating of the produce. Max, for those of you who know it, Max is just kind of, it just keeps going. And I was just kind of sort of talking with him, amazed at what he was accomplishing and stuff. And when I questioned him on that, Max's kind of theory is, we just kind of took a leap. Max just kind of answers the call. It's sort of what Max has always done. And he's like, we take a leap and we just hope someone saves us. And so far it's working well for Max. His plans for the future are the continued growth as they were planning, and then working with a lot of the new partners that he's got come across also. And finally, Emmanuel Family and Child Development Center. So this is a new place, and people I tell about this because I love their story and I tell it a lot, is over on Prospect, just north of I'm sorry? Oh, okay. On Prospect, just north of Bruce R. Watkins. And it's they just had built, so in March, they were serving 240 families. And they had 240 children, 140 families, about 20 to 30 sibling groups there. They had just finished a capital campaign and built this new facility on Prospect. They had not moved in it yet. And all of a sudden the stay-at-home orders came down. So they have the new facility that they're not in yet, and they have an old facility that they are in. If you want to go to the next slide, please. So this is their beautiful new facility that was empty because they hadn't got there yet. Their attendance dropped 80% overnight. Their parents who brought their children here were in lower income jobs. They lost their jobs fairly quickly, and if they didn't need to go to work, they didn't need to have daycare. So they dropped very fast. Their expenses doubled because they had the new building and the old building. So some of that stuff was going on. They were serving about 70 kids back in March and early April. Their pivot kind of was like, if we are needed in the community. They're one of the few urban daycare centers in the community. They know they're needed, and they were not going to survive if their families didn't survive. If their families, had to leave or go other, or didn't make it, they were not. Emmanuel won't survive, and if Emmanuel won't survive, they can't serve the community that needs them so much. So that was one of their instigators to kind of get going. They identified, and if you want to go to the next slide. So they identified 4 things that they needed, that their families needed. The first was food insecurity. And they very quickly, they had a bus route that would pick up the kids every morning. Well, they obviously weren't picking up kids, but the bus driver, they repurposed him into a delivery driver instead of a bus driver. And he went around and delivered groceries and other things that the families needed on their trips. Emergency assistance was something. They got some grants that they were able to help families with rent and utilities. One of the biggest things, and this is one of the things that they will definitely keep, but they were on paper. They were using flyers. Flyers were going home with these kids every day or every week or something to update and to inform as to what was going on. They weren't seeing the kids. They could pass them out with the other stuff, but the communication was a real problem. They've got some tech grants. They've converted to digital. They've helped the families convert to digital. They have teletherapy software that they were able to purchase so they can carry that out. They bought some laptops. They had some Zoom system. So all these types of things that they have put in place. And one of the benefits of that is they can actually see sort of into the families' homes now, which so makes them even more connected to the families. They're very, very protective and connected to their families. And so this would enhance that. And that was really great. The other thing that the fourth thing was that there was just a lot of death in their community. There was a lot of grief and a lot of sadness. And so just being there to support that, partly by making some of these just daily things go away, the fact that they could provide food and things, the teletherapy was helpful, and just being there to help people through grief. One thing I want to point out too is I think that first slide I showed with the bump, slump, surge, new normal, it doesn't always go so that way. I mean, it does go in that order, but sometimes you bump back a little bit. So one of their bumps later on, after they kind of had started to settle out, was that childcare is paid on a per child fee from the state. And for until August, the state was paying for 240 children that were registered at Emmanuel. In August, they stopped paying for that. And they only pay for bodies in the building now. That was a whole nother slump for them that they had to then address. So Emmanuel is, as I said, going forward, they're appreciating the connection to the community, that is really important to them. And then also they're going to have more connection with the parents as educators, teaching them how to actually teach their children, and with virtual and the new communication being much more connected to them. This little guy here, I'll talk about him in a minute, but I just think these are a couple pictures that I was sent. But there is a connection to the chiefs, and I'll explain that later. But anyway, and I think we're good.
All right. So I'm going to talk more about sort of the processes that we've been using. Kansas City Ballet has a fiscal year of July 1 to June 30. So we've already been through one iteration of planning and budgeting for the strangest year ever. And so we're starting to start our budgeting process for next year, which we hope will be a little bit more normal, but we don't know. So what we first have to do is gather our data and do an assessment. Involve as many people as necessary in order to get the most amount of information that we can. And what kind of information? Well, from external, what's the impact of, we looked at what the impact might be on our customers, both people who come to the theater, and we have a school. So we needed to kind of assess what that might mean for our school as well. Looking at what the impact might be on government grants. The arts don't get a lot of government money, but one big source of revenue for us government-wise is from the city's Neighborhood Tourist Development Fund. Well, that money comes from the hotel motel tax, and that just doesn't exist with the decline of tourism. And then looking at philanthropy, we actually, the ballet is fortunate. We don't follow the national trend. When you look at Giving USA, most gifts come from individuals. The largest part of our philanthropic pie actually comes from foundations, which have been very stable and in fact have been doing quite well because the market has been good, except for that really steep dip in March, but it's recovered from then. So we're very grateful to that. So, assessing that kind of data, looking at how external things are affecting your revenue streams. What are events going to be doing? Are we going to be able to count on those? And then internal, what kind of impacts to staff? And also making sure that kind of doing an assessment of our relationship with our donors. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So, we really have been able to look at and count on our relationships that we've grown in the past. If not, now's the time to be starting to develop those relationships. And during the assessment phase, it's not the time to look at conclusions yet, just to gather the data from, all departments, mine being philanthropy, gather as much data, work with my team to look at what we think might happen. And then evaluate the situation on the best of our ability, because we don't have a crystal ball and things are always changing. So, oops, there we go. Wait a minute, sorry, my mouse was going crazy. Okay, so then planning your scenarios, utilizing the data. what are the possible impacts on our programs and our mission? What are the changes that are necessary to our programs to stay relevant and to meet our mission? And then we need a path that everyone can follow. And it needs to be a wide path so we can maneuver within it and avoid pitfalls, but one that at least everyone knows what the boundaries are of it. So what we did at the Ballet is we had best case scenario, and what that would look like. For us, it would mean business as normal. Worst case scenario, well, that would be no performances at all for our entire season. And we also had to take into account possibly, up to 50% reduction in our school attendance as well. Then an in-between case, we had several of them. So we were doing that. So then budgeting. So this goes hand in hand with scenario planning, because you want to kind of lay out what it's going to look like and then put numbers to it. So this was from just the development side of things. So we started out with sort of what we had for FY20, then what scenario 1 might look like for a regular season where we had all of our performances. Some of the numbers I brought down a little bit anyway, just because, we saw that huge dip in March, and that's when we were starting to do our planning, was March, April. We didn't know what things were going to look like, and we knew that corporations were probably going to take the biggest hit. Plus, they're the ones most concerned with having a good community image. So supporting the arts isn't going to be exactly on target with that. And they want to be frontline with what is needed in the community. And that is basic services. So we knew corporations would come down. Individuals, we have pretty good relationships. And so I felt pretty strongly that we would maintain that number. Our ballet guild is a great organization. They love the ballet. And so I felt that number was pretty strong. And same with foundations for the reasons I talked about before. Sugar Plum is actually an event that we have. And so I kept that number just a little bit smaller than this year if we were able to do Nutcracker. So already by July, we knew we were at least in scenario 3. The photos are also related to Nutcracker as well. The soiree is our young professionals group does an event, and they're still on target to do something, however virtual. And then the government piece, what I talked about. And then our board, actually, that is the first place probably to do your assessment, is how your board is going to step up. And our board president challenged the board to go above and beyond. So these numbers, they blew right by these numbers, which was really awesome. So in doing the budget, our goal was not to have a balanced budget. We have run in the black for the last decade, at least, decade and a half. But our goal this year was to show exactly what it was going to take to run our organization and what realistically what revenues we thought we would be able to secure. So this is what we ended up with, and the board passed as our budget. I only took a snapshot of the earned revenue, which you can see we're actually probably on plan B with no subscriptions. We did have people purchase subscriptions, but they're on hold. We had no fall performance. We have no Nutcracker going on right now. However, we were hoping to do a holiday performance, which as of 2 weeks ago yesterday was canceled because the mayor once again limited the number of people who can gather. So we had to pivot once again. And then we still are hopeful that we can have something in our building in February and March. And we're looking at no spring performance in the Kaufman Center either, most likely. So, and then our school, we were hoping to be at about 70%. I think we're more at about 60% capacity. We were able to take a lot of precautionary measures and actually have students in our building. And it's been going quite successfully, which is really great. And then we have our other earned revenues. So our contributed revenues actually ended up being a lot lower than what I showed on the last slide, because we have no Nutcracker. Our guild, their ball ended up being virtual and did much better than what we had actually budgeted. But those are some of the things. So for the ballet, our key thing is keeping our dancers on contract, which is, so putting together a ballet company is like putting together a professional sports team. It's curated, you have to have the right people for the right positions, and they have to learn to work together and perform together. So as we know, with professional sports teams, that doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't even happen in one season often. So our main thing is to keep our dancers on contract, which they are. And so that means really keeping our eye on cash. For our CFO and for our board, one of the main things this year is maintaining our cash position. And having a good cash flow for your organization is one of the key things to know how you're going to be doing for the future. So we know right now with the way things are going for the ballet this year, we're pretty stable and steady. What we need to be looking at is the following year. So starting in July 1, 2021 is what we need to be doing in order to make sure that we can continue to grow and not have to cut to the core of our organization. So we really are, we have certain checkpoints to look at. In a typical year, we start looking at forecasting in January, because Nutcracker is such a huge revenue source for us. Until that is completed, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do forecasting. This year we started forecasting right away because we needed to know where we're headed and what the end game is going to look like. And at this point, the end game is going to be less red than what we had budgeted, but so we're very pleased with how things are moving along. But there could be any kind of external thing that happens that we need to switch gears again, just like with not being able to do our holiday show. We had to switch gears, and it's really important to have good communication when everyone is trying to pivot, because you can't pivot alone. One thing that we did not do, but I've heard other organizations doing, is doing sort of incremental budgeting. So maybe budgeting one month at a time, and then having the board approve 1 quarter at a time. Our board actually approved 2 budgets, the Plan A and the Plan B budget. So that gave us some flexibility. And then also looking at the forecasting, they can see the direction the organization is going. So yeah, there has been a lot of pivoting, and also needing to check in often. And that's where we kind of get to the team care piece of this. Let's see here. So for my team, for the development team, we do a check-in every morning and just keep in touch. You know, we're all used to working in more of an open environment. And so we miss that. I don't know about any of you who are used to working in an office and then now you're working from home. That water cooler time when you can bounce ideas off people, you know, when you have to make it more intentional by, you know, video chatting or emailing someone, it's a little bit harder. It takes a little more effort. So my team and I have a check-in every morning, and we do an icebreaker just to get to know each other a little bit better. And often we'll each drift off to do our own work, even though we'll be connected. So something will come up and we're just right there. In fact, there was even a Harvard Business Review management tip about staying agile and resilient. And they suggested having sort of work hour times where people just come together on a Teams call or a Zoom call without an agenda, and they're just working together. And so that they're just with each other. And it's very helpful. I have a couple of my teammates who are extroverts, and they really have a hard time working solo at home. So it really helps them. And then also our team, every day at 3:45, we have sort of an afternoon stretch break. We started out actually with a plank challenge. So we were doing different planks every day. And now we're on a crunch challenge. So we're up to 80 crunches. I don't know how we're doing it, but it also helps, I think, people mentally to do a little bit of physical exercise, a little stretch break to get the blood moving again, so that we can all take a deep breath and then come back together again. So Cindy, did you have more on the team care?
Not right now, I don't. So I don't know if you want to take this down, Jennifer. I think hopefully everybody has questions in front of them. So, but I'd kind of like to just open it up first to your thoughts at this point. If anybody just kind of want to weigh in, if there's any comments or thoughts just thus far that people would want to share.
I would like to jump in if I could. My name is Kyla. I'm with the Northeast Community Center and Harmony Project KC. I want to thank you, Jennifer, for your transparency, you know, with the numbers. I just find that really, really helpful and valuable, and just promotes honest conversations among us fundraisers. My question to you is about how you're framing, or if you've had any difficulty framing having an imbalanced budget, which I think is a very realistic thing to have, but how have you talked about that with your supporters?
Sure, that's a good question. So for us, it really goes back to the relationships we have with the program officers and the people at the foundations especially, and having a good budget narrative and a conversation as well, because they understand that this is not anywhere near business as usual, and that and I think they also appreciate that we're trying to be as transparent as possible. during this, and and we have a good track record with them as well of being good financial stewards and keeping them informed. And I think that goes a long way. This is, you build up that goodwill, and this is a time that you really sort of have to bank on that goodwill as well.
Just also on that, I think it's really important to share, to communicate with your funders. The funders want you, to succeed. So they're looking for ways to do that. A lot of them have said, I've heard many stories of just, use our money that we've already given you for something else or operations. And many funders have, many of you have had that experience, that you weren't required to use the money exactly as it was given. Colette Black, who is with the manual, I'm not sure I mentioned her before, but she's the development director there. She said one of their reasons for success was they had just come off this capital campaign. And so they had that relationship, and obviously people just helped them to build this building. They kind of wanted the building to be used and stuff. So they had a great relationship there. And so I think the funders just want to know what's going on with you, just want to know that you're, what your life really looks like, what your needs really are. But they really do want to help you succeed in this time. I'm seeing a couple of questions. Let me see.
Hey, Cindy.
What are PPP dollars, Jocelyn?
Steve?
Oh, that's the government, the Paycheck Protection Program.
Oh, if they did, I don't know for sure. I know Alfredo is not on the call. Colette was on the call. I don't know if she's still here or not. I do not know if they received those. I do know that Colette did share a story, and that goes back to the little guy who was there with in his little Chiefs shirt. They got, so Patrick Mahomes, 15 and Mahomes, I guess they give out $15,000 grants for the 15. You guys can probably figure that out. And they gave them money basically for hazard pay. And they were really clear that they wanted it to be for hazard pay. And Emmanuel loved that. They loved that their staff was being recognized for that purpose. The staff loved it that someone was recognizing of what they've been going through. And the foundation was really clear, like, we recognize that you're going through this. And so that was the reason. And then that's why they had a little party after that to do that. So that was a little bit of money, but I don't know. I did not ask either one of them if they got PPE money. So
for the ballet, we did receive PPP money. We applied like right away, and I think we got it in April, which allowed us to be able to finish out the year with our dancer contracts and pay everybody in full on the staff through the end of the fiscal year. Since then, we've taken anywhere from a 15 to 25% cut. The dancer contract went from 35 weeks to 28. So we all took an equal measure of pain, so to speak. And we just found out that our loan was forgiven. So apparently we just found out last week, so, which is very good news. But that's another thing then that we have needed to explain on our financials, because last fiscal year, since it was a loan, it showed up on the balance sheet, not in our operating statement, income statement. Now this year, our auditors have said, show it below the line, so not on the general operating income statement, because there are no offsetting expenses. All of those expenses were shown last fiscal year. So it's a little funny. So we're going to have to explain that to our funders for a while. But as long as we explain it, and it's what our auditors have told us to do. So I think we're okay.
Can I jump in, Irene from El Centro?
Yes.
And I have a question in regard to what's often unprecedented for nonprofits is endowments. what have you seen? Because endowments very much are what today is about, right? Uh, to be able to help in times like that. Have you seen the nonprofits or know of nonprofits that were able to, utilize and I just don't know if there's many that have those, and just wondered where that fits into the scheme of budgeting and getting through this crisis.
Yeah, that's a good question, and I can answer that because the Ballet does have a nice size endowment. Not we don't think it's adequate, but because we were in an endowment campaign, we were about almost 2 years into it. So one of the things that the PPP loan allowed us to do was to not spend the earnings from the endowment last fiscal year. So then all of the earnings were shifted to this fiscal year, which is very, very helpful because we don't know if there's going to be another round of PPP, and we did not budget with that in mind, but we were able to take 2 years, spend 2 years of earnings in 1 year this year. And even with that, we had a almost $250,000 deficit bottom line on our budget. So I hope that helps. Did that answer your question, Irene?
Yeah, it's helpful to note because we also have a small endowment and have not had to touch or have not had to utilize it, and we're really thinking about the coming year and what
Sure.
fundraising looks like and what all that means. Because you're correct, PPP funders, along with the CARES Act dollars, have really kind of helped us get to the end of the year. But because this isn't over, it's really kind of thinking about the coming year, and our fiscal year's in between all of that. So we run on a July through June, yet this is really talking about where things are January through December. So for us, it's trying. So I appreciate the budgeting pieces and just trying to think through all of that.
Yeah, one of the hardest things for us was to do the worst case scenario budget because no one wanted to think about the fact that we could go for an entire year with no performances. That just hasn't ever happened. There are a few, like maybe 1 or 2 ballet companies in the country that have gone back to some performing. One of our dancers was actually on a leave of absence and went to Finland, and they had a beautiful world premiere ballet of Jekyll and Hyde back in the first weekend of November. But we're not Finland. Finland hardly has any cases. But yeah, for a while there was nowhere in the world that anyone was performing on a stage, and that's never happened. So it's just crazy to think about, but you have to, kind of suck it up and go to that terrible case so that then you can come back from that and have interim steps. Because we know even 2021 is not going to be normal. I mean, we don't know if even by October, the world will be at a point where we can have people in a theater. Are people going to feel comfortable? Even if we have a vaccine and a lot of people have gotten it, we just don't know. So we're having to do a lot of contingency planning even for next fiscal year, which will start for us, like you, Irene, on July 1st.
Jennifer, I have another question about budget narratives. So Mary, do you want to ask, or I guess give your comment about budget narratives, Mary Needham?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the budget narrative, I think, is probably the most important piece of all of these things. the numbers on the paper really just tell you the finished product, but in order to kind of better inform your funders, I think the budget narrative can really give a lot of information about what your thought process is and what your different contingencies are within that number. I think that too, it is important to give some feedback as you go along where you are against some of those benchmarks. So what we're doing, because of course we're submitting grant applications throughout the year and talking to our funders regularly, but you know, updating those different measurements kind of quarterly as we see how things are going, and giving some additional context is something that we've had some good feedback on.
Yeah, I love that.
Just kind of going back to what you were talking about when you were talking about how you get your team together and just that communicating and keeping you guys all connected and stuff. Steve Howard with Heart to Heart made a comment about how they're doing Zoom updates with corporate sponsors, corporate partners, I guess. So I don't know if you want to say any more about that, Steve, or if anybody else is doing other things in that way.
Sure. So thanks, Cindy. Again, I'm corporate relations, and so my job is the liaison between our major pharmaceutical companies and Heart to Heart, and of course most of them are obviously outside of Kansas City, so I do a lot of traveling, and without the possibility to do that, one of the things that we've done is just initiate a Zoom call with updates on what we've been able to do. You know, I think we started in June or something in July, and just kind of helped update the corporate partners on what we've been able to do this year. We've actually been very blessed this year at Heart to Heart, and so that's just one of the ways that we've felt to be able to keep them informed of how we're using their dollars.
And we're practically out of time, and that actually is a great segue into next time, isn't it, Jennifer?
Yes,
so
it is.
that's kind of what we're going to be talking about next time, is how that communication with people like this and how you do that. So if anybody has any more questions, we're happy to take them. We always kind of hang out a little bit longer, and you're welcome to stay and talk to us privately. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. I'll let Tim have this back if he needs anything that he needs to say before we leave. Thank you, everyone.
You're muted, Tim.
Thank you to Cindy and Jennifer for their time and insights. We do appreciate it. Thanks to all of you for coming. If you have a chance, you can fill out a little evaluation for us so we can improve our programming. Mark posted it in the chat for you. You can always revisit this seminar or this session along with the others. It's posted on our website. And then finally, don't forget to join us next week for Cindy and Jennifer again for 2021 events and donor relations. So have a good day, everyone.